Welcome, my name is Ray Poynter and I'm going to be the facilitator moderator for the session today. We're going to have a panel discussion in a moment. It's going to last for about 60 to 80 minutes. We're going to have 4 topics. Each of the speakers has brought along a topic to talk about. Go to the panel discussion. Here is our esteemed panel for today. We've got Vanessa Oshima, who is joining us from Tokyo, Geoff, who's joining us from New Zealand, Navin from China, and Sue from Australia. So right across the Asia Pacific region, and also 2 who are going into summer and 2 who are going into winter. So we've got a nice hemispheric split that way as well. So Geoff, we're going to turn to you.
Absolutely.
Your topic is?
The future belongs to the bold, Ray. This is my topic. Shall I kick off?
Yeah, just kick off. Give us a little bit of your thinking.
Okay, yeah. So you remember it would have been about a year ago, I joined you on your Futuring Friday, and I talked about, in fact, I think we all talked about some really far future concepts. I talked about the possible use of AI in the future of market research and how potentially humans could actually be replaced in the process. I'm actually going to bring it a little bit more immediate for this discussion because I think that in our immediate future, we actually face some risks of being left behind unless we can be just a little bit more bold about how we deliver value to our clients. And I think we can do that using things that are available to us today. I don't think we need to be waiting for anything new to be invented. And what I mean by that, if you have a look around at some adjacent industries, say the industries revolving around big data analytics, for example, they're doing some amazing things with AI. They, by definition, they of course are generating huge volumes of data, and they're applying neural networks to that, which is incredibly powerful. And of course, the bigger the data, the more effective neural networks are. And there are companies that are applying that new AI technology to exactly the same questions that primary survey research has had as its sole domain, actually, for the last several decades. So I think we need to be on the lookout for how we can be disrupted from the outside. On top of that, think about the number of companies that are pooling all of their marketing data, all marketing relevant data, which of course includes the data that we care about in our industry, survey data, into huge cloud storage platforms. There are data lakes and data oceans, which are the new terms now for what we used to call data warehouses. And there are IT people who believe that they can do everything that a research agency would do so long as they have the data in their data ocean. And even though we would argue that they're wrong, they are getting traction. And so they are giving their marketing people access to their survey data along with all the other marketing relevant data with tools and using techniques that I think risks marginalising the research agencies and the value add that research agencies can now do risks being commoditised. And what amplifies that risk is that there are still people in our game in market research that are using tools that have been around for a long time, and they're using them, I believe, inappropriately. So, in fact, anecdote, this actually happened yesterday. A prospect of mine said to me, look, we've been asked by a client to produce a 1,000 slide PowerPoint deck, and we want to do that more efficiently. And of course, the answer is probably yes, you can. But what I actually said was, why? Why are you doing that? I think PowerPoint slides are great to help communicate an insight that you've already generated, but they're really bad at sharing results or at generating insights. And it's the same for large crosstabs as well. So I think there are lots of tools that we can use today that are an awful lot better at generating insights and sharing insights than the huge PowerPoint slides that people are still asking for and delivering, and large bundles of crosstabs. We need to be bold in choosing the tools that we use. Otherwise, we just risk being swamped by the technology that's coming in from our flanks. Is that a good start, Ray? You happy with that?
It is, and I think just to maybe broaden your concept of bold, I'm quite often asked by people on the client side for a one-handed researcher. And what they mean by that is, well, I keep finding people are coming in and saying, well, on the one hand, people are wanting this. On the other hand, maybe it's not statistically significant. And they don't want the other hand. They want to know what is the main recommendation going forward. So, Navin, do you want to chip in on this at all?
Yeah, I think one of the things that we're going to see is that a very resounding return of the old ways, in a sense, because as Geoff said, we've been doing this for a long time. And, when we say big data and large data sets, it's not new. We've been working on census, or national media studies, and a lot of the work might have been manual but so now we have more tools, AI and machine learning, which help us work with it easier. But it's always been there.
Navin,
and it'll just get better.
So, Navin, you've been pushing new technologies for years and years, and you've often met resistance. You're one of the first people pushing mobile. You wrote the book on mobile with Sir myself. What are the barriers, do you think, to people adopting new stuff? Why is it always a bit slower than we would like it to be?
Right. I think that's it's not a research thing. I think it's everything. People didn't want to adopt cars. They felt that the horse was way better, and so I think it's not unique to us, and it's universal. Looking at technology adoption for research, I think it's been slower than other industries, because the impact we could not show moving to technology or investing in technology. There was a huge ROI for our industry, because it's a lot of intellectual capital out there as well. So that's I think one of the reasons. And also we don't have an outsized impact often. So again, there's a resistance to change a lot of the old ways and invest in, say, technology. So I think these are the market realities. But however, what has helped us, and I'm probably eating into my topic, but what has helped us is basically the digitization of our whole ecosystem. So has seeped into research as well, which is now, gathering pace. And now, even if you're a traditionalist, you can't help but adopt some of the tools which are available, and often free or very cheaply. And as these get more accessible, it will be very mainstream. I mean, when we wrote the book on mobile market research, it was considered path-breaking, and today, it's mainstream, and there's no way that building a platform from scratch would benefit many innovators. There are free tools. If you want to build on that, that's fine, but it's a different environment. So and that'll keep changing. So I think now we are really adopting it, but that's technology. What's coming tomorrow, we don't know.
So hi, it's Vanessa. If I can just sort of add on, you said, well, why are we not so good at adopting it or moving fast? It's because I believe we are all working together in this ecosystem. And so even though Geoff and the team might be ready to move forward, and you and Navin might be ready to move forward into mobile, you need you're going to throw the ball, you need somebody to catch it, and it's clients and it's the customers and consumers and everybody. We've got to, and if we're all not sort of almost joined at the hip going, then it's going to be a little bumpy. And I think that's where, you know, we kind of get a little bit frustrated with, like, sort of saying, I can see the future, I can see where it's going, and I'm bold, and I'm going to be Amelia Earhart and take that step, or I'm going to be whatever. And then and I look around and it's like, okay, where's the people? The people are not with me.
Where am I going to land this thing?
Yeah, and I think, you know, in any of our careers, especially when we're young as well, being bold is like, oh, we've almost got nothing to lose. But almost when we get older and we get in our careers, we're, and I'll speak for myself, is you become a little bit more conservative about, okay, maybe I can have 1 strikeout or 2 strikeout a quarter, you know, and so we start to be a little bit more conservative. And so it's about creating that environment where it's okay to fail. We always say that, it's, you know, create that environment where it's okay to fail. But also to creating that awareness, like, you know, sometimes you got, you know, you're speaking a language about the future, and it's like you're speaking something foreign, like you're speaking French and I'm speaking German or what, and it's just, I can't grab it. And how do we just take the time to bring everybody sort of go, oh, I can see that. And I think that then it becomes a little bit less risky because now you can see it. And I think just take,
there's, if I can just knit together what Navin and you were saying, Vanessa, there's another more pragmatic reason that it is hard to be bold, and that is the bills need to be paid, right? So this client who's saying, you can get my business if you can make 1,000 PowerPoint slides efficiently. Well, it's really tempting to say, to not be bold and question the value of those 1,000 PowerPoint slides, to say, yep, we're on it, we're absolutely. And I think the way that we navigate that is that we say yes. In other words, we stay in the conversation, because when we're in the conversation, we can exert our influence. And we start off by providing what it is that's actually asked, and take that opportunity within the relationship to drill down and find out what is the real underlying need that these 1,000 PowerPoint slides are serving. And now,
you know what? That's a really interesting. I was just thinking about the idea of a dead rubber. You know, like in cricket and stuff like that, we have a dead rubber, and it's just like, you know what? We're trying to get to a goal, which is decide who's the best. After 3 games, or, you know, after 2 games, we've already figured that out, and we're just going to play the dead rubber. And it's like, why? Why don't we just like call it quits?
Yeah.
England's the winner, New Zealand's the winner, whatever it is. And that third rubber is like whatever money was going to be spent on that goes to some charity or something like that. But imagine if you did that with focus groups, which is like we've booked 12 focus groups. 8 focus groups I'm in, and I've pretty much figured it out.
Yeah.
So I'll just call it quits. And rather than sort of saying, you know what, I only did 8 focus groups, so I'm only going to pay for 8 focus groups. It's like, well, you basically got me what I needed in 8 focus groups. I was willing to pay XYZ for it, so here's your XYZ. You know, and you don't get dinged for having great recruitment, great insight, great whatever. I don't know, that's something I have just thought up now, which is what I love about panel discussions.
So you must have a view on the bold.
Well, I mean, the thing I was thinking about, Geoff, is the value of the proposition that you came along with is, yes, we can keep looking in our same ecosystem, but you're actually, when you're talking about, you know, like things like AI and other things, it's the value of actually looking outside, you know, this square. And it is similar to a presentation of Ray's earlier in the week, where he's, you know, talking about, you know, our ecosystem and, you know, like the growth of what we would call research that's actually happening in other areas, and we're not necessarily playing. So, you know, I think it highlights to everybody, don't think that, you know, we're just going down this path here. You've got to be monitoring what is happening everywhere else. And I mean, if you see some great stuff happening elsewhere, I mean, that's gold. But also you can get inspiration from other areas. So, you know, you need to be constantly scanning, you know, like the broader environment, whether it's the broader business environment or even other areas that spark these interesting ideas and leaps. And I think that's where being bold helps, because when you spot them, you actually have, whether it's the courage or, the whatever else it is that it takes to go with it. And I think, we need to be very careful about this looking inward and need to be looking outwards, to see where those new opportunities come from.
Love that thing. Yeah, absolutely.
I love what Navin basically said about big data. It's like, big data has always been around, and census data and things like that. I remember doing a presentation a few years ago in Australia where I said it's no longer big data, it's almost obese data. And it's like in trying to figure out where the wheat from the chaff is, there's a whole, we've always been we've been skilled at finding the insight inside a bunch of conversations or a bunch of stuff. And I think that's where the industry, where we really add value, is being able to find that nugget inside. So, I don't know, sometimes I feel like we're staring like deer in the headlights going, oh, big data, what are we going to do? And Navin's absolutely right. There's always been big data. And when you've got, 36 hours of conversations from ethnographic and stuff like that, that's big data, as far as I'm concerned as well. So
Geoff, do you want to just sum up where we are on that topic? And then we're going to move to Vanessa's topic.
Thanks, Ray. Yeah, I'll actually bring in a comment that was made, and I can't remember if it was Vanessa or Navin before we started the webinar in response to the topic, and I'd like to retrospectively change it from the future belongs to the bold to the future is built by the bold. The future actually belongs to everybody, and it is the bold that are building it. Look, there's been some fantastic, we could go on, I think, for another half hour just on this one topic, but I'll summarize it as that there are things that we can do if we're brave enough, just with the technology we have right now, to be able to we need to be bold and have the confidence in ourselves, as Vanessa is saying there. We are naturally curious people. We have huge value as researchers to add to all these other streams of data. We just need to have the confidence in our ability and be bold in applying that ability. Thanks, Ray.
Absolutely. So, Vanessa, what have you brought along today for us?
So, I basically wanted to talk a little bit about how within the insights industry right now, we're going through this real state of uncertainty for many people. And a few years ago, I wrote a paper called Brand Ikigai, like finding your Ikigai. And Ikigai is about purpose and your lifeblood. And it's a Japanese word. But it also is supposedly the lifeblood of longevity. So for the industry to survive with longevity, for a team. So for example, I'm in charge of the head of marketing at Starbucks Japan as well. And it's like, what is the role of marketing right now when in the middle of COVID, we're all trying to think about, we're not trying to drag people into the stores at the moment because the stores are closed, or what is our role? What are we doing right now? And how do we add value to the organization? And so Brand Ikigai, just to remind everybody, is 4 simple questions. And so anybody in the panel listening, the first thing is to get really sharp about what you're passionate about. So like within your business and within the things that you're doing, what are you passionate about? And the second question to that is what are you good at, or what are you differentiated at, which I think for the industry, we can say, what are we passionate about? And we're quite passionate about as an industry of being the voice of the consumer and that true voice of consumer. And within the industry, what are we good at? And we just touched on that with we're good at distilling insights and things like that. What does the world need? That's the third question. And the fourth question is, what is the world willing to pay for? And I'd like to sort of focus on that. What is the world willing to pay for at the moment? Because I put the challenge out to say that there's enough data in the world, that big data thing again. So what if I said to you, I'm never going to pay to make data again? Like actually make data with a survey. I'll never pay to make data because it's already there. My consumer's telling me it every single day. So if all the data's out there, I'm going to pay for something else. So what might that be? And if we work backwards to it, so what is the industry? What is we as an industry able to monetize in this new big data world of free data? CRM data, all the rest of it. What is it that we're able to do? And link it to what we're passionate about. what we're good at, and what the world needs. Just a gentle reminder is that sometimes, I don't know, I'm going to show my age at the moment. Does everybody remember when we traveled, flights and went to hotels and stuff like that, and you used to step into the hotel and you'd have to decide how many days of Wi-Fi you wanted, and you'd buy a day of Wi-Fi, like 1995 day of Wi-Fi, or a 3 day, or should I go for the whole 3 days kind of thing of Wi-Fi, yeah? And then it got to a point where it's like, Wi-Fi should be free, right? I'm not going to pay for what Wi-Fi should be free. I don't know about you right now, but the amount of Zoom calls and things, and I'm in a shared workspace in Tokyo right now, I'm paying for Wi-Fi again, and I'm paying for high-speed Wi-Fi. I don't expect it to be free any longer. I need it to be high speed because of my changed environment, which is all these Zoom calls 24/7 kind of thing. The idea of not paying for water, because you always got a glass of water for free whenever, Ray will know this, whenever you go to a Japanese restaurant, you always get a glass of water for free. To the point now I'm paying for water. To the point now we're coming again, we're just like, you should not be paying for water. You should be having your tumbler and filling it with tap water. And so I keep challenging ourselves to keep thinking about what people are willing to pay for, because sometimes we get caught in our own old-fashioned cycles of this is what's always my business model, and I think the business models are changing. So that would be my question out to everybody, is that keep assessing your brand ikigai, keep assessing what you as an industry or as a team or even as a person or as a mother or as a whatever is passionate about. What is it that you're necessarily good at in, that change? What is it the world needs, and what is people willing to pay for? And do that exercise just to keep yourself relevant, which, I think the industry has to go through right now. I don't know if that answers the question, but that was what's going on in my mind about the issue that we're dealing with right now, which is how do we stay relevant and, being able to, keep that business model going.
I think that's several great points, not surprisingly, but that what people will pay for, I think is a really fascinating point. And just take your hotels example. What we saw was the first hotels that gave you free Wi-Fi were the cheap hotels. The ones that hung on to charging you were actually the expensive ones, much longer. And when I started in research back in the 70s, I did a lot of work with McCann Erickson in London. And in those days, brands gave advertising agencies a big wodge of money, and they used that money.
I love that word, wodge, a technical term.
Absolutely. And they used it holistically. So they bought research, they did creative, they did all sorts of things. That money was handed over, and they then would use that, quotes, intelligently to give the maximum value and the best parties. And as we move forward now, we've got to a situation where a lot of clients are buying on a menu basis. They're buying really cheap, but they're not getting the continuity of support from their suppliers. And maybe coming back to what you said about the dead rubber, they need to put some money in there, which is just, this money is to enable you to know my business better so you can give me better advice.
You know what, Ray, you and I once had a conversation in Tokyo about asking the question of, do you know how we make money? And this was about Coca-Cola at the time, because Coca-Cola makes money from selling concentrate, the Coca-Cola company. It's the bottlers that make money from selling Coca-Cola. And it was like, coming with ideas about knowing how a business makes money, how that actual company's business model works, makes you a very smart and intelligent person, not just the customers, but actually knowing the business as well. And so I love that idea of, is there, blow up the models. Is there a retainer? Like this idea of an actual retainer, which is that my business, you're in once a month, you're in my business review sessions and things like that, which is like, I don't need to sit down with a 10-page brief to explain to you the business, because it. It's a completely different model. And I think that's something interesting. I think there's a lot of what I'll call urban myths. I've just been through some research recently, which is about what would people pay for and things like that. The team wanted to be actually interfacing with the customers straight off the bat. This idea that we had to keep it all kind of unbranded and stuff like that. It was like, you know what, screw it. it's all branded. We basically said who we are, what we're here for. And what was interesting is that the customers are so comfortable right now with telling brands directly their opinions, whether it's on Facebook, whether it's on Twitter, whether it's whatever. There wasn't like, oh my God, it's this client, I should be nice, or it was just like, okay, now I've got you. Here's what I want to say. And it was incredibly liberating for the clients who are not like separated with behind that mirror any longer. But also too, it was blowing almost a belief that we had that this is the way it needed to be done out of the water, doing qual with an iPhone, and basically rather than saying sit down at your PC with no noise, and it's like, you know what, just put your iPhone on and walk me around your house, talk to me, these kinds of things. And it's just easier for them because they don't have 4 people in an ethnographic situation in a small house in Japan, which people, they don't feel as comfortable. So yeah, a lot of learnings for me during this COVID piece as well, but just keep thinking, what are we paying for? What are we doing? How are we different? And that would be my thing. Sorry, I've talked too much. I'm interested to see what Sue and Geoff and Navin think.
I actually have a question, Vanessa, if I may. I love the 4 elements that you mentioned. There's the passion, what is your USP, what you're good at, what does the world need, and what is it prepared to pay? The question is, what does the world need? Are you encouraging us to ask that question within the sphere of our passion and what we're good at?
So the way Ikigai kind of works and is that you ask the questions and then you're trying to find the intersections. So for example, if you just list out what does the world need and you're like, oh, and that's what I'm passionate about and that's what I'm good at, and you get that intersection, then it's all right. So you don't need to start with that filter. It was really interesting when we were doing this. People are trying to find personal Ikigai. So like, just because I'm in my own funk and I need to get my own brand Vanessa back together, which I went through when I got cancer, and I was just like, I was lost. I needed to start with those first 2 questions. What am I passionate about? And what am I good at? Just a reminder of myself that I wasn't all about cancer any longer. So I started with those 2 questions. When I'm working with brands or businesses, I tend to start with what does the world need and what can we make money off? Because that's the business model. And then when we get that list up, we go, okay, now what are we passionate about and what are we good at, to help filter through that to find the links. Does that make sense?
Absolutely, yeah.
So you don't actually have to start in any particular order,
Yeah,
so
it's the intersection.
Because like an MPO doesn't necessarily have to make money, right? And so, so maybe they don't start with how do I make money? It's like, what does the world need? What am I passionate about? And what will we be good at to help society and make social impact?
So I think those 4 questions there have got real relevance to the trade associations. And Geoff, you're with RANS, Sue, you're with the Research Society. Vanessa has just run election to SMR. So I think those questions, particularly what will people pay for, is going to be fascinating. But Geoff, I'm going to ask you in particular about one of the services I've heard Horst talk about several times is being custodians for data. And that again is a different charging model. How did you convince clients they should pay for this? Because that isn't something that you would have normally expected to pay for. You want to pay for holding the data.
In fact, that's exactly what Vanessa was talking about. I think, Vanessa, when you mentioned about the possibility of a retainer, and that's effectively what a couple of clients, one you've already mentioned, Vanessa, in fact, we were doing this when I think you were with the Coca-Cola company too, is that the Coca-Cola company obviously does research with multiple agencies all around the world. And it's a really hard job to wrangle all the different agencies with all the different methods, all the different
the big data, the obese data.
And so we kind of fell into this role where we were helping them bring together all of these disparate sets of data and harmonizing it. And after a while, we figured that we can monetize this, and in fact, we offered to continue providing that service with a retainer model. So yes, Vanessa, that's exactly what we've done.
And I think that's the thing. It's about just continually asking. It's like your question of, why 1,000-page PowerPoint? It's like, why are we doing it this way? Is there a better way? And it's because the end goal is not 1,000 pages of PowerPoint, to be absolutely honest. The end goal is to take a bunch of information and get it disseminated somehow, whether it's PowerPoint or a town crier standing on a box. It's that, that's the goal. And I think we get lost in thinking what that goal is, or what the actual objective is of what we're trying to do. So I think asking that question of why, or what's keeping you awake at night, or what are you willing to pay for? You could just make this headache go away, this disparate sets of data, I would pay X for it. Until somebody asks the question and says, well, you know what, that could be something we would do. And I think that's the question we need to ask with the industries, like, whether it's the market research, whether it's SMR, whether it's, the various industry groups that we belong to. It's like, what is the problem we're solving right now? What is, the thing that we're passionate about, that we as an organization are going to be able to do better together rather than alone, to the point where people might be willing to pay for something or invest in something.
So Navin, does this ring any bells with you and your urge and desire to move the industry forward technologically?
I think a lot of this needs far more consensus than often practical. Like Geoff mentioned, the 1,000 slider. It makes no sense, but it's baked into the quote. It's been negotiated, and you gave already a huge discount because you spoke to a purchase person who had no clue what a 10 slide executive summary versus a 1,000 slide. So a lot of these things make no sense. Even the point, Vanessa, you said that after 8 FGDs, I know what I want, but we go through the motions and the dead rubber. I love that. The last 4 need to be done. And if my client said, this 8 I'm fine with, I'll have a heart attack.
Talk to me about why. Why will you have a heart attack? Tell me why. If I basically said, Navin, you've done such a great job after 8 focus groups, I'm done, I'm good.
So because we're thinking ahead of the consequences. That's like 30% of my revenue gone. And I need to redo the contract. And now they're going to adjust the, all these things
that's
are running
really
through your mind.
Because I would be basically saying, hey, I've got it done in 8. Let's say it was whatever, let's call it a number. It's $20,000 or whatever. I was like, it was supposed to be 20,000 for 12 focus groups. I got it done in 8. And I'm like, well, here's your 20,000. I want you to spend the time. The time that you were going to sit moderating, I want you to spend the time on the actual report now.
On the report.
Right.
I wish that happens more often. It hasn't.
Bold, Geoff,
I mean, sometimes I have different versions of that, in the sense that we were building a software for a client, and we had a lot of modules that they wanted to build into it, and then we decided to merge a lot of modules, which basically reduced a lot of our work but made the product better. And that worked well for both the client and us. But that's not normal. If we can normalize it, it'll be great.
So just to
that's probably the next question. How do you normalize it? Sorry, Sue.
I was just, it's interesting that, Vanessa, you've proposed a really interesting idea of the dead rubber. Navin doesn't like it because it messes with his contracts. I mean, if we want to go back to sort of, like we kind of think you don't want qual theory and methodological, considerations getting in the way of business decisions. But in actual fact, like a lot of qual theory was, you keep interviewing until you learn no more new information. But you can't write that in a proposal normally. So you say, I'm going to do X groups. But in actual fact, you've got a really sound methodological reason for doing it. So you can write, we will, do sufficient focus groups or depth interviews until we learn nothing else. But you're paying for X. So the leftover, you can propose, topics to explore. So in actual fact, it's one of those situations where, good practice and business combine in a really happy, intersection, if you like.
Well, isn't that really interesting? That's a really great idea, like turning the dead rubber into a live rubber, which is like, okay, we're done with the 8. We've got a bunch of people recruited already, ready to come in. What else do you want to know? And we just quickly rewrite a discussion guide or quickly rewrite a thing, which would probably give the moderators a heart attack. It's like, but that's an interesting thing to sort of say, okay, we've pretty much got that. We can.
Right. I think, Vanessa, that already happens. Like, you might have started with an X objective, and within 8, maybe even shorter time, you've understood it answers your question, and then we explore additional themes.
I hate the idea of Navin having a heart attack, and I'm a real fan of value pricing, right? So what it was that you priced for the, let's say, 20,000 was the value that was created by the information that came in from the groups and the way that the researcher put it together and generated and shared insights. Now, if that happened with 8 groups or 12 or 20, it doesn't matter. The same level of value was generated. I know this is a hard equation to sell, and I think this is what you mentioned, if that was Sue maybe, is what you said, Sue. But I think that's the reality of what we do, is we're actually in the business of generating that value, not delivering 12 groups.
Maybe that's the consulting model, sort of the one that we always talk about, the sort of the McKinsey model and things like that, which is like, this is what we're delivering to you, and how many, we'll get it to you, and you're not quite sure what the black box is and how many things are inside it, but they're delivering that value, as opposed to, I always find it really interesting when you're working with big consultants, which is like, we're going to deliver this and this and this, and they're not line itemed. It's like this and this and this for the wonderful price of $200,000 kind of thing. And then in research, we're like 8 groups at X number and 8 rooms at X and 5 Obento boxes at whatever. It's like, it's line itemed to death. So it's definitely an interesting one.
Very conscious of the time and the fact that you will need to drop off.
I do.
So
I'm so sorry.
No.
I really enjoyed it. Thank you.
That's fantastic. Thank you so much. And Navin, what's your bring and show today?
Right. So the topic I've picked is the impact of digital on insights. As Ray earlier you said, I've been at it for a long time, and I actually used to be in media research, where households had to keep a diary, a pen and paper diary of what they watched, when they watched, which channel, and that quickly moved to meter-based things. So I've always, and I saw the impact immediately, where reporting cycle was 3 to 4 weeks, came almost down to 10 days. And the impact on the business was immediately. And I saw that in retail research and then consumer research as well. And I've always tried to be part of that movement. And when mobiles came about, we started doing, now, of course, all of us have iPhones and Androids, which are very advanced. But when we started, we did it on Java phones, Nokia, if everyone's old enough to remember the Nokia phones. And Blackberries, which were considered the gold standard. Vanessa is not there, but actually they were gave me one of my very early breaks. Very nice. with helping them build an application for Coca-Cola on BlackBerries. And the transformation from there on the consumer side was very fast. They moved, they picked up the iPhone, Android, and you saw the death of Nokia, very fast. And people forgot about these guys who sold more phones a day than iPhone did in the first year. And in research, that has not happened. Change has been very slow. But if you look at the inflection point we are right now in, the change is happening very fast. And Vanessa talked about the place our industry is. And I think a lot of it has to do with us, the players in the industry who have not, moved with the times. And what has happened is that research has not shrunk at all. It has actually, I would say, doubled, tripled, or really, but it's the space has been void has been filled by consulting companies, analytics companies, and a lot of software companies who are doing everyday market research activities, but not calling it that and not believing they are part of our industry. Data scientists and a lot of statisticians who work with a lot of digital data don't believe they are market researchers. So they think they're technologists, data technologists, and things like that. So I think we have an opportunity to claim our industry back and roll with it. So that's my thinking. And earlier I had also mentioned that when you look at if you go back a couple of decades where digital was not an oversized part of our lives, you had national polls, you had census, and you had a lot of national media studies where you dealt with millions of data points and you analyzed it. Yes, of course, you didn't have tools that allowed you to do a machine-based analytics, but you still had the statistical tools to do an analysis which probably took you a week or 2 weeks earlier. You now can do it in a day. Like I think recently I did a segmentation study for a client, and we tried I think 11 combinations, and each combination went through a number of iterations, and all that happened in one day. And I remember doing a segmentation study probably 2 decades ago, the first time when I did it. It took us 3 weeks before we arrived at the segments and things. But after that segmentation, the analytics part, then the analysis and churning out the insights, what I took this time and say 20 years ago, I think is the same. The report and the what was delivered to the client, I don't think that I spent any less or any more time. So I think the digital is here to stay, and if researchers are here to stay, we need to also evolve and embrace what's out there. So yeah, so that's the broad reading that I have.
Okay, Geoff, any thoughts?
Yeah, absolutely. I've got quite a few actually. I don't know where to start. Well, I'll pick up on one point you made, Navin, about the expansion of our industry is happening, and this is something that I've believed for a long time, and I believe it in exactly the same way you described it. It's expanding because there are different players. In fact, this is what I meant when I talked about, you know, those adjacent industries, right, that are sort of right there doing the sorts of things that we're doing. And I think I may be misquoting you here, but you talked about software providers who are don't realize that they are in our industry, but they're actually doing what we do. It's exactly what I meant. And in fact, I don't know if anyone else saw it, but I got an email in my inbox today from Qualtrics, which is not necessarily adjacent to our industry. They are largely overlapped, but they position themselves as an experience management company now. And they have just launched this new product called Experience Management, or XMOS. And the way that they describe it is to understand customer segments, to your segmentation point, and their needs, and then design breakthrough experience for target segments. So they have designed a software platform that does exactly what you described you did in 3 weeks, 2 decades ago, and in one day just recently. They're doing what we do. Do they consider themselves to be in our industry? I don't think they do, and I think that's a challenge for our industry.
Yeah, but we understand it better, you know. So a lot of like I work very closely with a digital agency, and I've worked with them for 10 years. So they started off as a mobile digital agency, and now they're just a digital agency because mobile, everything's got walked, right? And whenever they had data needs earlier, I filled that void, you know. And now they offer all those services as part of their service. And while the cost of the insights is like baked in, you know, because they give a report, you're doing a lot of social media tracking, so all that is baked into their service. And very often the dashboard and the delivery of the regular reports is packaged in a way that it looks like it's free.
Yeah.
From a delivery standpoint, it's not free.
Absolutely.
But the agency is talking about the campaign, the social media activations, the CRM work, and the report is secondary or part of the service. Yeah.
I think you've hit the nail on the head, Navin. In fact, I would argue that the thing that is being positioned as free is actually the thing where the most value sits. All of the data collection, all of the analysis, all of the processing, all of that has a huge cost, but no value accrues to anybody until that turns into something that can be delivered to somebody who cares about it enough to take those understandings and turn them into actions in their business. Yeah, I'm with you 100%.
Right. So we see that as well. So you have this delivery, which is very standard, and now they want to look at it one level up. You know, they want to see that, okay, you have all this data. Can you tell me in 3 months or 6 months what can my sales be? You know, they're talking about modeling that data to do some projections. Mm-hmm. So then they come back. But what I'm saying is that over time they will have they are building models. So it's like right now it's rule-based machine learning, and they want to get to a point where it's totally automated AI. So effectively what we're talking about is that we are moving our in a way intellectual property to people who are selling it better and managing it better. And I think if they can encroach into our space, maybe we can do the same and offer services which are maybe considered beyond our purview.
Absolutely. Consider it. Sorry, sir, I know you've probably got some things to say here too, but let me just add to that, because think about the moving into their space. We know market research. Market research is hard. Market research data is hard. Generally, the other kinds of data that these adjacent industries care about are technically easier. And so because we've got the hard bit aced, we should be really in a good position to also bring in those other sources. and to get the value. In other words, impinge on their area. Yeah, I'm with you 100% again.
Sue, any thoughts?
We didn't prepare this.
I mean, again, you sound like lots of different thoughts, but I sort of reflecting earlier when Navin, we were talking about, various things in digital data, and it sort of reminds me when we were, writing the mobile book, which, in many ways is a long time ago now. In many ways, it still stands up a lot of it, like really quite well. But, there was this idea with mobiles that everybody is carrying, essentially a very powerful device with them at all times. So, there was the idea that we would only ask people questions when there was no other way of getting that information. Yet a lot of the time people are still asking questions. Like, I could take your phone, with the right set of tools, look at where you've been, everywhere today, everywhere the last week. So I can know a lot about what you've done. And then I can use, the idea of asking questions only when I need to. And Ray often talks about the idea too of no questions research, and what proportion of the industry isn't asking questions. But yet we haven't moved as far away from asking questions as we might have thought we would.
Right. So I think the really smart digital agencies and technology companies, they start with that, so they probably say, oh, we want to learn about the consumer, and then they look and say, oh, is that how much you want for a survey of 100 people? So he says, okay, forget it. Let me see with that same money what I can do with what's already out there. So a lot of what is being done by players who are not research centric, a lot of that we can offer, and because we understand data, we should be able to do a better job. And I think that's going to come back. I think we as researchers are going to claim our land back, in a sense, because now a lot of these tools out there are getting cheaper, and often they are free. So you're going to see AI-based tools get to be more accessible, and we'll be able to do a lot of things, and it'll be fun to be a researcher in a way, like we'll build models. You won't be stuck with one model, and to do product testing, we only do this and we don't believe in anything else. So I think a lot of those legacy things are just going to go, and we can start having fun again.
We'll claim it back, Navin, if we're bold.
I was going to ask the question too, and it struck me partly through Vanessa's piece as well as yours, Navin, and possibly even a little bit of yours, Geoff. This idea that Vanessa proposed of, well, what will people pay for? There is that element, but there's different ways of paying for things. Now, whether there's different business models, etc. Can you see that evolving so that, like whether it's a subscription model or some other way of, people paying for the things they believe there is value in?
Right. I think Vanessa talked about paying for Wi-Fi. I think we're going to get into a situation where there'll be a light research, which will be very, very good. And then there'll be a kind of an advanced or more mature research, which will need more involvement and which would be paid for at a higher premium. So that's how I see things evolving. I think the online space is a good example. So if you want to say script a complex survey, you can do it for free, or you can do it for what the going rates around $500 a survey, and then after that, when you're even collecting the data, you're paying anything from $1.50 to a couple of dollars. per complete, and so look at free versus a dollar plus. So it's a big difference, and I think that's going to happen for the rest of our business as well.
So we're going to move to Sue in a moment. I'm going to share one of my favorite analogy stories, really, in the light of what Navin's just been saying. So the guy used to work at this computer center and he retires after 40 years working there. And a few weeks later, there's a problem. So they bring him in as a consultant and said, what's wrong? And he has a look at it and he gets out a piece of chalk and he puts an X on one of the panels and says, the problem's in there, just replace the board that's behind that panel. And they do that and it's all working, and he sends in his bill $100. And accounts send it back, say, you must itemize your bill. So he writes it down and sends it back. Cost of chalk, $1. Knowing where to put chalk, $99. And we need to make sure that with the digital, yes, these bits over here are really cheap. Knowing how to get insight and advice from them is the value we're adding, and we need to be charging for that moving forward.
Okay.
Sure. So Sue, you're our fourth topic.
Okay, excellent segue, right? So Geoff proposed the idea that the future belongs to the bold. And I know, Geoff, you have tweaked a little bit along the way, but I was going to counter with the future belongs to the learner. And that can be people who can learn, people who prioritize learning. So if we then kind of think about Vanessa's ikigai concept, learning helps you create your own future. It can help us create, the future for the industry. But if you even just want to think about yourself, it's through learning that you can design and create your own future. So, I think everybody on the panel and all of the other Futuring Friday panels that'll be on later today, point out, we're living in these constantly changing times. There's excitement, but there are challenges. And it's often through learning that we can address those challenges. And I know I keep talking about your bold statement, Geoff, but if you even think about it, if you're someone who's not as bold as somebody else, it's actually through knowledge and learning that you can become more bold. Some people will, embrace change when they don't know things and go for it, and that's great. But there are other people, once they have more knowledge about something, they will become bolder and make more change. So I kind of want to propose learning and keeping up to date as a great tool for helping us keep up with the times, but also helping us embrace change, be bold, and perhaps move towards the future that Navin is advocating. So, if we, break it down differently as well, if you want to keep up with the leading or bleeding edge, yes, you need to keep up to date. Learning can be many different things. If you, have found yourself going through, perhaps change that's not been great over the last 12 months, or slightly longer in other parts of the world, perhaps you've needed to pivot your career. So the idea of acquiring new skills is a very powerful way of being able to change your own career. If you're trying to move forward in a career, you might want to go from, say a more operational role to, a leadership role. There's a role for learning, training, and skills development there. In tough times, you're wanting to make your business more efficient. It's the idea of learning how to do things better, faster, more efficiently that can help you there. And the other idea I wanted to think about when we're talking about learning is important, but sometimes unlearning can be important as well. If you've been doing something in, not the best way, unlearn that, learn how to do it better. If, Geoff, you want to, forget about doing some of the analysis the way you used to, you have to unlearn how to do that. You have to unlearn that you should make 1,000 slide PowerPoint deck and learn what is the other alternative. So I'm kind of just wanting to put a shout out for learning as one of the great tools to help create a better future.
Yeah, I think I certainly would pick up on that unlearning being really key. So if we want to create agile solutions, then we need to unlearn lots of things that we would previously have said are essential gates in the process. in order to be able to deliver that. And I'm going to throw a particular bugbear of mine, which is video editing. Because I think we need to think about what is it that researchers need to learn. Yes, research topics, but actually coming back to what Navin was talking about, using a lot more digital, and what Vanessa was talking about, collecting a lot more videos from iPhones. I see people really struggle to edit them, both from a technical point of view, they don't know how to use editing suites, and from a editorial point of view, how long should that clip be? How many clips should I use? How should I combine those clips to make something that's really effective? So I think that if we want to, as Geoff and Navin have both said, move into neighboring disciplines, we need to have the skills that are appropriate for those. And for me, one of those would be video editing, creating the right sort of deliverable final product. Sue.
And I think there's an interesting thing there, and it's the word you've used, is appropriate. Now, yes, maybe it is that you should learn more about video editing. Is it actually that you should go and learn how to use video editing software? Or do you need to have enough knowledge of the process to be able to just tap into somebody else? So you might watch the videos and say, right, you know, I want a clip that runs from this timestamp to this timestamp. And it's actually more efficient for you to then recognize that you're not the best person to be technically editing the video, but you know enough to know how to instruct that person to do it. And I mean, that's a simple analogy. If we go to Geoff's AI example, not everybody needs to go and learn how to be an AI expert, but you need to know how to talk to somebody who is. You need to know what you know, and you need to know what you don't know. And I think sometimes learning enough to be able to have a conversation, learning enough to understand where it is complex and you should bring in an expert is an important thing as well.
Absolutely. So, Geoff, any thoughts on this, the learning mission?
Absolutely. No argument from me whatsoever, Sue. In fact, I might suggest the future belongs to the curious, because that sort of covers a little bit of the bold and the willingness and the inclination to learn. And at the end of the day, curiosity, I think, is what differentiates people in our industry. We are, I think, we're drawn to doing what we're doing by our curiosity. And I would argue that if bold people, if you're going to be bold, that you have to be willing to learn. There's no point in being bold and doing something that has no relevance to what's around you. So yeah, look, I am completely aligned with that. I'm also intrigued with your reference to unlearning, and yeah, I would, Ray, I think you drew the connection. The unlearn, or was it you? So I can't remember. The unlearning of the value, or the supposed value of doing the 1,000 tables or the 1,000 slides. It's really hard to unlearn when you've got money coming in for it. And so, you know, I think the willingness to unlearn and being bold also go hand in hand. I love it.
Navin, you must spend a lot of time learning about new tech.
Yeah, for some, yes, but some I use the Sue method. You know, just understanding, getting a helicopter kind of a view to ensure that it's not way beyond me, but enough to give direction and have some control over the process. Because the little programming that I've done is so long ago. None of the tools that I did it in exist today, and there's no way I can learn those. But yeah, certain the logic that goes into it, that doesn't change, and that kind of helps. So yeah, and also I wouldn't pick video editing. It's not my battle. It's way beyond me. You know, so you pick your battles as well. So you can. There are some areas where you can learn, and then there are some areas that you just have to defer to someone who knows what they're talking about, and sometimes just listen. And of course, and to Geoff's point about being bold. While being bold is great, but I think there's a lot of element of luck that needs to play into it for realization of a lot of the bold action one's take. So right place, right time, all those things make a difference.
Yeah, absolutely. And in fact, I would take that a step further, Navin, and say that I think, as I mentioned to you earlier, that I think luck is even more than just an element of it. I think we're all very lucky to be where we are because we didn't choose our parents or where we were born. So I think luck is a really important part of it. Having a learning approach, as Sue is advocating, being curious, in other words, and being bold, amplify the things that you already have. And in fact, even having a bold attitude, is probably something that's a little bit lucky too. Could I just draw a link between something Navin said earlier and what you're advocating for, Sue? We could say that the future belongs to the humble, because the humble understand what they don't know, right? Which is what you're saying, Navin. You've got to understand what you don't know so that you can either leave room for somebody else or leave room for yourself to learn. And I'm thinking, it reminds me of the anecdote about Nokia. You referred earlier, Navin, to the death of Nokia. If they had been more humble, if they had been willing to learn from what they were seeing that Apple was doing in 2007, we may still have a Nokia around today. We don't, because I think that their attitude was, we know this industry, there's no way this upstart can get in here, we're good. And they turned out not to be. And one of my big bugbears, Ray, is complacency in our industry. I'm really into what Navin is advocating, which is us moving out beyond what we consider to be the boundaries of our industry into those adjacent areas and taking bits of business off those guys.
Right.
So, Sue, any thoughts about how we might go around making learning more central and relevant?
I mean, I think there's lots of different ways. I mean, I think first and foremost, I mean, it's nice to think that, yes, my boss will pay for me to go and, go to this conference, go to this course, have time to, perhaps study, some particular thing. But at the end of the day, everybody needs to be kind of in charge of their own destiny and in charge of their own life. And most important thing that everybody can do is say, well, learning is something that I can take charge of myself. Now, there's free learning, you can read books, you can listen to podcasts. There's lots of opportunities to learn without spending a lot of money. You might have to be in your own time. Probably everybody who's on this call today is someone who, to a certain extent, has personally prioritized, keeping up to date and learning. So to a large extent, we're probably preaching to the converted here. But I mean, I would encourage anybody to actually say, I'm in charge of what I'm learning. Now, if we then think about what does it mean to, be in charge of your own learning, in some ways, it becomes easier if somebody else is helping you, because they say, right, I'm going to go and, send you on a course to do X. But when you take charge of your own learning, it gives you a lot of freedom, but it also creates a situation where you need to be reaching out to other people to kind of say, well, what is good? How can I learn more? What do you recommend? I mean, obviously, that's where things like mentors, to a certain extent, if you go to things like the various trade bodies, you've almost got a curated set of things that you can learn. So, if there's a course on X, it's probably something that is good for people generally in your industry to be involved in. Now, it may not be necessarily something that you need to learn, but you've got a curated set. If you go to an industry conference, that starts to give you a sense of what topics are available. So there's lots of ways to direct your learning, but I'm also a big fan of, following your passion, and it probably taps into Vanessa's Ikigai topic as well. Yes, you can say, I'm going to go and learn, how to code this computer program, but if you're not inherently interested in it, you're probably not going to find that road easy, particularly if it's a road you're going to travel down yourself, by yourself, in terms of, self-paced learning and things. So I think it is good to be cognizant of what you're genuinely interested in, what you've got skills and aptitude in, but that doesn't mean you shouldn't try some things, like you could say, go to a free coding sort of website and start to learn some skills. Now, you may never learn from that, how to analyze, one of Navin's data sets, but it will give you a sense of whether it's something you want to pursue further, or whether it's something that you just learn enough to be able to talk to an expert about. So, I think we're all spoilt for choice. The big challenge is in curating what you need to know. And Geoff has his hand up there wanting to interject, I think.
So, Geoff?
We don't think we don't think much about learning as we go through our business, and I'm really inspired by what you're saying to start doing that. And it's just occurred to me that just about an hour before this meeting, I sent out an email to all of our team, everybody in the company, inviting them to take part in a contest to use our tool to create insights. And it's just occurred to me that the purpose behind us doing that is because we want everybody to learn this new feature that we've built into the tool. So I guess we are doing what you're encouraging us to do, and I think that it's just a case of putting a context around it, or seeing it in the right frame, which is we are actually encouraging our people to learn, and we need. I think
you may have gamified learning, Geoff.
Yes, yeah.
But there is a history of problem-centered learning too, and in actual fact, for people who learn by doing, that is great. The other thing you could probably do within your company is, encourage a social aspect to learning too, where, you may have, I'm not sure exactly what, how you've set up your challenge, but potentially you've set people off on an individual path. But the other thing you can add to that is, sharing, or, people presenting, what they're working on partway through. So you start to, bring in some social elements as well. And you could grow that into something quite powerful, probably.
Yeah, a good point. What we're actually doing is keeping it individual, but we're getting everybody to present what they come up with to everybody, so everybody can learn. And I've already had people respond to me, even in the hour since I sent the email, with ideas on what they're thinking of doing. And I want to do something that's different, that's never been done before. That's exactly what we want.
So I'm going to add one note of caution. I'm passionate about learning and skill development, but about 30 years ago, I was working with a company, and we announced that we were going to spend one afternoon a month on learning and skill development. And one of the employees suddenly burst into tears. And so one of my colleagues had a chat with her, and she was working till about 8 o'clock most evenings to meet her commitments. And her assumption was, and probably correctly, had she not burst into tears, would be that she would have to make up the time that we put the training in by working till even later. So if we want to facilitate skill learning, you need to make space in people's timelines. You can't just say, do this learning as well as your normal output.
Yeah, really good point. Yeah,
it's not on, really. So, Sue, any final thoughts before we move to close? And if there's any thoughts from the floor, people listening out there, that would be great.
I was just about to ask, are we taking questions from the floor?
Well, I think they're all backed by what you've all been saying.
I mean, I think it's been a fascinating discussion. I think in many ways, although we've picked different topics, they all intersect, you know, ever so much. For me, Navin and Geoff are probably mostly challenging people to, you know, move forward, you know, look beyond, you know, the immediate boundaries. And, you know, I think that's absolutely what we should be thinking about. You know, you don't want to be, you know, siloed into where you've been. And, you know, I'm a big fan of looking for inspiration, you know, outside. I mean, you occasionally, you know, people go, oh, I went and did an improv course, you know, to help me with my presentation skills. And I mean, there's lots of things like that, you know, may not immediately count as, you know, like learning or professional development, but they can make you, you know, ever so better at it. You know, I have seen, you know, things advertised where you can go and do, you know, like a radio announcer's course. Well, in actual fact, you know, in the right sort of work, I mean, maybe all of us here should have been and done a radio announcer's course. You know, like you don't need to think too narrow about things. And I think looking in those adjacent areas can be really, really powerful for all of us. In some ways, you might just grab the ideas of, hey, they're doing, you know, trying to eat what is traditionally our lunch, so let's get over there. But also, you know, inspiration can come from, you know, like the strangest and most unusual places as well. So I think, you know, get outside your usual comfort zone. And the other thing is, you know, if you're lucky enough to have, you know, a boss who might be like Geoff, who's Ray, who are freeing you up for an afternoon a week to learn something and get involved in a challenge, that is fantastic. But, you know, at various points of your life, you may actually have to, you know, make your own time to do that, you know, and whether it is, you know, Tuesday night or Saturday morning, or whether you're reading, or, you know, whether you've taken annual leave to go to a conference, you know, at the end of the day, you're the person who will be better for it. So I would encourage everyone who's interested in the future to make sure you're looking after your own future.
Absolutely. And we do now have a comment from the floor, so I'm just going to read that. Another field where periphery industries are cutting in is the whole CX UX sector, who've done a great job in creating a new need for business. And I think we can learn a lot from what those two areas have done. They've become narrower in that they only use a handful of the tools from the market research toolbox, but they've become much more integrated with the rest of the business. So UX tends to sit in the design team, not in the insights team. CX, very integrated with ops and performance and remuneration. So that's another way of moving forward, of saying what we're going to do is take this tool and really integrate it with more of the business. Sorry, Geoff.
I was just going to say, yeah, that reminds me of the Qualtrics XM that I saw the email on today. That's exactly what they're doing, that experience management and bringing it into our sphere, or getting into our sphere.
Absolutely. So big shout out to all of our sponsors, particularly to our two newest sponsors, Opinium and Particity, and of course to Infotools, who are with us on the line here today. So thanks to all of you. Thank you, and we look forward to seeing you at the next event.